Let's be brutally honest for a second. The greatest strategic failure in marketing today is what I call the Lead-Gen Junkie Trap. It's this core belief that getting an email address is somehow a signal of real intent. It's not. And what's worse, we're ignoring the neurological fact that these low-friction leads, they're actually the most expensive vampires in your entire ecosystem. No joke, they drain your resources, your sales team's morale, and your profit margins. So today, we're going to dismantle that trap. We're not just talking about a new tactic, we're architecting a completely new way of thinking about customer acquisition. We're going to build a system that filters for intent from the very first click, making sure every lead you generate is a potential asset, not a liability. Let's get into it.
We've all been sold this lie. We've seen the gurus on social media bragging about their 10,000 new leads for, 50 cents each? They flash these spreadsheets overflowing with email addresses and tell you the money is in the list. But here's the paradox they never ever mention. In today's market, the cheaper the lead, the more it actually costs you. Just think about it for a second. Every single one of those 10,000 emails costs you money to store on your CRM. Every one of them gets dumped into an email sequence that costs money to run. Your marketing team spends hours creating content for them. Your sales team wastes precious time calling them only to be met with, "Who are you again?" This isn't just a passive list, it's an active drain. You're not just paying for a vanity metric, you're paying for the privilege of sabotaging your own success.
So, this all brings us to a fundamental choice. There are really only two mindsets here. On one side, you've got the volume junkie. They are completely obsessed with cost per lead, CPL. Their whole world revolves around getting more names, more emails, just filling the top of the funnel until it bursts. And the outcome? It's always the same. A digital graveyard, a list full of ghosts. But on the other side, you have the LTV architect. Now they operate on a totally different level. Their key metric isn't volume, it's what we call LTV density. This isn't just about the lifetime value of one customer. It's about the concentration of high-value customers in your lead flow. It's a measure of quality, not quantity. The architect knows it's way better to have 100 deeply engaged leads on a clear path to becoming customers than 10,000 digital ghosts. And this whole explainer? It's about making that critical shift from junkie to architect.
To get you there, here's our game plan for today. We'll start by really dissecting the Lead-Gen Junkie Trap and understand the history behind the great lead quality crisis. Then, we'll introduce the core of the system, the cognitive filter stack. From there, we'll dive deep into the psychology of commitment that powers it all, lay out a clear framework for architecting for intent, and finally, we'll establish the new standard of growth. Okay, first things first, we have to completely reframe the problem. You think you're building a pipeline, right? But when you focus on low-cost, high-volume leads, you're actually building a bottleneck. See, every low-quality lead that enters your system demands time, automation costs, and sales attention. They clog the arteries of your business, and they prevent the truly valuable prospects, the actual lifeblood, from getting through. And here's the really insidious part. You are actively training the advertising algorithms to find you more of these low-quality leads. When you tell Facebook or Google to optimize for the lowest cost per lead, you're literally telling them, hey, go find me more people who love downloading free stuff but will never ever buy anything. You end up creating this self-perpetuating cycle of failure, where your ad spend gets less and less efficient at generating actual revenue.
So how in the world did we get here? Well, this wasn't some overnight disaster. It was more like a slow-motion train wreck, happening right out in the open, across the entire digital marketing world. And it all culminated in what we now call the Great Lead Quality Crisis. This was the moment the old rulebook was officially lit on fire. It was this perfect storm of content saturation and total audience burnout, and it forced a complete reinvention of how we think about getting new customers.
In this progression, it wasn't exactly subtle. For years, the free ebook was the undisputed king. It was a simple deal, your PDF for their email. But then we hit what you could call peak information. Every single inbox was just flooded with ultimate guides that nobody ever opened. The opt-in basically became a signal for please send me spam. By 2024, we hit this really bizarre and painful turning point. You had marketing teams proudly telling their CEOs that their cost per lead was staying low, maybe even going down. But at the same time, the finance department was sounding the alarm because the customer acquisition cost, the real cost to get a paying customer, was skyrocketing. The gap between a lead and a customer had become a giant chasm. They were filling the top of the funnel with sand and wondering why the engine was seizing up. This whole crisis forced a major shift from an email-first mindset to an intent-first philosophy, where the smart money started looking at LTV payback periods, not just the size of an email list. And this crisis, it forced a realization that leads to the single most important insight of this entire explainer. We have to fundamentally redefine what a lead magnet is for. It is not a bribe. It's not a free gift you hand out just to get an email address. A lead magnet, when it's designed correctly, is a psychological audit. It is a carefully built test you perform to find a real customer hiding in a sea of casual browsers. It's all about filtering for commitment from that very first interaction.
So this brings us to the solution. If a lead magnet is an audit, then you need an architecture to actually perform it, and that architecture is the cognitive filter stack. This isn't just a single PDF, it's a multi-layered system designed to progressively qualify users through a process we call intent hardening. This is simply the process of taking someone from casual curiosity all the way to a firm commitment one step at a time. It's the engine that separates the signal from all the noise.
Now, this filter stack is built on 3 distinct tiers of commitment, and each one has a very specific psychological job. Tier 1 is the breath magnet, which we call the aspirin. It's for a broad, surface-level pain. Tier 2 is the depth magnet, or the diagnostic. This is where we get personal and specific. And finally, Tier 3 is the intent magnet, the solution, which is that last step toward a purchase. Each tier asks for a little bit more from the user, and in return it provides way more value, leading them up a ladder of commitment that they choose to climb.
Let's break these down. Tier 1, the aspirin. This is your front door. It's a low-friction offer, meaning the cost for the user is tiny, usually just an email address. This could be a simple checklist, a one-page cheat sheet, maybe a curated list of top 10 tools, or a simple template that saves them 5 minutes. The key here is that it's immediately useful and super easy to consume. Its job is to solve a surface level, but really common, pain point, and solve it fast. It attracts a wide audience, sure, but it's also our first, very gentle filter. It just answers the question, are you even aware you have this general problem? It's the initial handshake.
Now, Tier 2, the diagnostic, is where the real magic happens. This is the pivot point. You shift from just broadcasting a generic message to actually collaborating with the user. You ask them to invest something way more valuable than their email, their time and their specific data. This could be a quiz, a calculator that projects their potential ROI, or an assessment tool. And in return, they don't get a generic PDF, they get a personalized diagnosis, a result that's tailored specifically to them. This is the crucial step where they go from being a passive consumer to an active participant in finding their own solution. And finally, we have Tier 3, the solution. This is your highest friction, highest value offer, and it is guarded. It is reserved only for people who have proven their commitment by going through the first 2 tiers. Why? Because this tier requires your most valuable resource, your team's time or direct access to your product. This could be a one-on-one strategy call, a personalized demo, a paid workshop, or a free trial. The key is that it provides a direct, tangible experience of your core solution solving their specific diagnosed problem. This is where a prospect truly becomes a customer. It's the moment of truth.
This whole system operates as this dynamic process of intent hardening, and we measure its health with a single, non-negotiable metric: tier migration velocity. This is just the rate at which a user moves from Tier 1 to Tier 2 and from Tier 2 to Tier 3. We stop obsessing over total leads and become laser-focused on this velocity. If someone downloads the Tier 1 aspirin but then ignores the follow-up inviting them to the Tier 2 diagnostic, the system makes a critical decision. It doesn't chase them, it archives them. That means they get moved to a low-priority list, which frees up our main communication channels and our sales team's attention for the people who are actually demonstrating real commitment.
So why is this so devastatingly effective? Well, because it's not just another marketing tactic. It's a system built on the fundamental principles of human psychology. It works because it's aligned with how our brains are literally hardwired to make decisions and assign value. So let's dive into the behavioral science that makes this whole engine run.
The first pillar here is the consistency principle. Decades of research show that once we make a small commitment, our brains are wired to make future decisions that are consistent with it. Think about it outside of marketing. If you agree to put a tiny campaign sign on your lawn for a neighbor, you are psychologically way more likely to later agree to volunteer for that campaign. The small yes paves the way for the bigger yes. The Tier 1 magnet is that small sign on the lawn. It's a micro commitment, a small yes. By getting that initial agreement, you're priming the user for the larger yes of Tier 2 and the ultimate yes of Tier 3. They are, in a very real sense, just completing a loop that they open themselves.
This leads to a really profound shift in perspective. With this system, you stop selling in the traditional sense. You start indoctrinating, and I use that word very intentionally. You're guiding the user on a journey of discovery that they themselves have chosen to take. Every step feels like it was their idea, their initiative. And this process systematically deactivates the brain's natural sales resistance because they feel like they're in control. They're pulling themselves toward the solution, not being pushed.
The second psychological driver, which is super powerful at Tier 2, is the IKEA Effect. This is the cognitive bias where we place a much higher value on things we've had a hand in building. When you ask someone to spend 5 minutes putting their data into your growth calculator or answering questions in your assessment, you are triggering this exact effect. It's the same reason that a lopsided bookcase you built yourself feels more valuable than a perfect one you bought already assembled. And that is why the personalized result they get from your Tier 2 diagnostic isn't just data to them. It's their data. They co-created the insight. They are neurologically invested in the outcome. And as a result, they don't just value the result more, they value your brand more, because you were the one who helped them discover this for themselves. You've transformed from just another vendor into a trusted partner.
Okay, so we've covered the what and the why. Now let's get into the how. Moving from theory to practice requires a really disciplined framework. This isn't something you can just throw together. To become a true architect of intent, you need a blueprint. Your system has to be built on 4 specific, non-negotiable pillars. Let's break them down.
Here they are, the 4 pillars of mastery. First, friction value equilibrium, which is about making sure every ask is met with a worthwhile reward. Second, the data bridge, which means the info from Tier 2 seamlessly informs the Tier 3 offer. Third, the migration trigger, which is the automated system that invites users to the next tier at just the right moment. And finally, the ultimate metric, LTV-by-Entry-Point, where you track the long-term value of customers based on how they entered your system. For now, let's just focus on the most foundational pillar of all, the equilibrium. This right here is absolutely critical. Friction value equilibrium just means that for every ask you make, there must be a corresponding win that is of equal or greater value. At Tier 1, the friction is low, just an email, so the value is a quick, broad insight. At Tier 2, the friction goes up. You're asking for their specific data, so the value must also go up, a truly personalized diagnosis. And at Tier 3, the friction is highest, their time for a demo or their money for a product. So the value has to be the ultimate price, the full solution. If this balance is off, the entire system just collapses. If you ask for too much data at Tier 1 for just a simple checklist, nobody will convert. And if you offer a high-value diagnosis at Tier 2 but ask for nothing in return, you failed to create that IKEA effect, and you don't filter for commitment. The balance, it's everything. So let's bring this all home. The tiered lead magnet system really represents a new standard of growth. It's about moving away from the empty calories of vanity metrics and toward the nourishing substance of genuine customer commitment. In a world that is drowning in free information, the only currency that actually matters, the only true signal of future value, is a user's willingness to commit. And this system is designed to find and nurture that exact commitment.
You see, the best marketing doesn't push people through a funnel, it pulls them toward value. It creates a journey that's so compelling and provides so much insight along the way that the final sale just feels like the natural, inevitable conclusion. By analyzing your tier migration velocity and your LTV by entry point, you're not just running a campaign, you're learning. You're discovering the precise path your best customers want to take. And that's what this system ultimately teaches us. Growth isn't a straight line you try to force. It's a pattern you discover. Growth isn't linear, it's learned.
And so that leaves us with one final crucial question. I want you to take a hard, honest look at your own marketing. Look at your dashboards, your metrics, your funnels, your lead magnets, the whole shebang. And ask yourself this: are you building a list, a digital graveyard filled with the ghosts of low-intent leads? Or are you architecting a selection engine, a system designed from the ground up to attract, filter, and convert only the best customers? The future of your business really does depend on your answer. The choice is yours.